So as stylists, like the most important thing when I'm meeting with a client, whether it's a magazine editor or a commercial client or a celebrity, is speaking strategy. And so usually the way you get your foot in the door is your voice and your portfolio. And then what you have to speak when you're in there, I start with my accomplishments because that's usually what people want, they want to know. Like that's how you build your trust. Like, oh, this is what I've done. This is what I've been able to produce. For this show, sales went up 200%, blah, blah, blah. I go through my accomplishments that are going to be important to them. And you also, before doing that, there is a strategy to even speaking your accomplishments because you've got to figure out what's going to resonate with someone. So I'm trying to think of an example of that. When I was working with Reebok, and the big sports company, they didn't care about Love magazine. They don't even know what that is. But then when I'm speaking to someone like a big celebrity that's a little bit more in tune with fashion or a high-end fashion designer, they really care about Love. That's like a huge thing for them. So you really have to, when we're working with some of the more mass market companies, they care more about the celebrities they work with. And Vogue, because everyone cares about Vogue. So it's really, you have to really think before you go into meetings, even meeting with agents, talking about your accomplishments. And talking about your accomplishments before you have an agent is really where you've been, who you worked for, your apprenticeship, what you learned, and what you want to do. And so when we start to meet with new potential clients, we have to speak strategy to them so they want to hire us. And it's not really what I was doing meetings. My agent was sending me on meeting after meeting after meeting, and nothing was happening. And I was like, I'm not going to do these meetings anymore. He was like, you can't do that. I was like, but nothing, I go in there, I show him my book, I feel like a model again. Because when you model casting, you just throw down your book and chick, 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 thank you, and they push it back to you and you go. And maybe you walk if you're lucky. And it was even crazier because I'm lugging this 500-pound book around. It's huge and you slop it down and I'm like, okay, what do I say? And no one told us. None of my, and because I guess when you're assisting, I was never in the room when the stylist I was assisting was having these important meetings. When you're having I call them it's not a pitch, because you're not pitching. It's just your potential client meeting. And when you start to work with the really successful companies, they always want a pre-meeting. And usually for shows, they want a pre-meeting because you're in such close quarters for a certain amount of time, they're gonna make sure you're not totally psycho. I started to think of, okay, what can I speak that's gonna have these clients be intrigued and wanna work with me? And first I just started talking through my book. So when they were looking through my book, and I found it actually has been really helpful to do that. So when I sit down with, so that's kind of my strategy for speaking in potential meetings is, when I sit down and they're looking at my book, I talk about my inspiration behind it, the collaboration that I did with, how I collaborated with the magazine editor or the commercial client, how I collaborated with the photographer, why I chose the model I chose, why I chose the hair and makeup I chose, why I chose the outfits I chose. And I just started talking about why. Why? Here was my strategy. It's okay, there was all this thing going on, so I wanted to do a Madonna's in Vogue video, or her Vogue video, and so I referenced the Vogue video. And sometimes, at first I kind of felt like I was giving away stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I'm telling them my secrets. But then I was like, it really helped them understand what I do. Because some people, some art directors, even though they've been in the business for a gajillion years, they still think we're wardrobe. And I'm like, sweetie, your shoot will be a lot better. You'll get so much more out of it, and for what you're paying me a lot of money. It's I can just steam it and put it on. I can just steam a dress and put it on for someone if you want me to. But you're going to get a lot more for your money if you have me help you with research. And I'm really, me and my teams are great at it. We're really good. So I started speaking through my book, and then I started saying, okay, that's only getting me so far. And I started to look at, okay, what do I need to do? And it's that's when I started to practice speaking strategy with the clients. So I would start talking about, and it's hard because you don't want to give it away. You don't want to give away all the gold. You just want to show them that you can think and that you're a business person and that you're showing them how creative you are in your voice with your book. And then you want to show them that you are a strategic business person and you can help them make money, get more press, do whatever they're trying to accomplish. So, I mean, the strategy starts with just even talking to who you're working for, whether you're assisting a stylist or whether you're testing with a photographer, about what they want to do too. You know, like what are they trying to accomplish? Why are you even there? And then when you're working with big business and powerful business people, they're really clear about what they want. And it's like when you start to hear that come out their mouth, you figure out how you can take care of that. And you know, for us, it's interesting because we do, you know, these intense business strategies all through imagery, which is really complicated. But it's what makes, you know, it's what makes us so, we have this really, stylists have such an intense knowledge in fashion and in parts of pop culture that we're able to interpret into money for people. And it's really rare, you know, and I think there aren't that many stylists, like we're not as common as like, you know, there's a lot of hairstylists in the world. I feel like there's a lot more hairstylists than there are fashion stylists. So we're really specialists that people bring in to consult with them on whatever company they're doing or identity, like that. So just to speak to strategy a little bit. So when we speak our strategies at potential meetings, that's why people hire us, is based on our strategy. So I'm trying to think of how to explain this the best. So like with a magazine, they want to hear my strategy for the inspiration. They want to hear the strategy for what kind of imagery, like what kind of woman I'm going to be creating for their magazine. They want to hear my strategy for my creative teams that I'm going to hire, the photographers, hair and makeup, the casting. Casting is like a whole strategy within itself. And then how I'm going to take care of their advertisers. And that strategy alone is, you know, what magazines really care about, because that's their money. So being able to speak your strategy, whether it's for an editorial, and then with clients, you know, meeting with a celebrity and a designer. Well, I'll talk about the designer. So I was meeting with this designer, and basically, you know, I was talking to him, and I said, look, my job really, it's like my strategy is to let you know anything that could get you a bad review. Because this person was had a little bit of a reputation of being like egotistical. I was like, if you're looking for a yes person, like I'm not the guy. Like you want to hire someone else. And I said, you know, what I do and what stylists do, what good stylists do, is they help protect you from bad reviews by letting you know what could be referenced. So my strategy with this designer was to like let him know, like, here's what I do, here's how I edit. Because I knew that was going to be really important for him. And he was like, you're the first person who's ever said that. And I still work with this person. And he's like, that is the most powerful thing any stylist has ever, and this person's worked with like huge stylists. And he's like, that's the most powerful thing any stylist has ever said to me about what they do for my show. Because, you know, it's like, when you get to the big shows, you're getting paid a lot of money. And it's not just about matching a shoe to a dress. Like, it's about your whole strategy for everything, every little thing you're doing. So, and you know, the first thing in being able to design a strategy is being able to know what you want your results to be. So, you know, you gotta figure out your purpose. So speaking to, you know, when I first meeting with the magazine, I like to talk to them about the voice. You know, I talk to them about their what woman, what's their demographic? You know, what woman are they, or man are they driving their magazine toward? And then also I like to look at the fashion, to talk to the fashion director, because usually you're meeting with like a fashion editor or a fashion director. Usually it's another stylist, which is really interesting, usually to sit with another stylist. I mean, it's great, I love it, I learned so much, so much. So the stylist, sitting with fashion directors who are also stylists, you know, talking to them about their voice, because I know they're gonna be editing and critiquing everything I do based on what they like. And sometimes it's an opinion, sometimes it's an assessment. But if I want to work for that magazine, I just got to deal with it. And I think that learning, asking as many questions as you can, and then designing the strategy, and then, you know, it's like you got to get really good at strategy because you got to be able to design it in the moment. And when you hear them speak, okay, here are my concerns, here are the results I want, here's the purposes I'm looking, you know, here's my purpose for hiring you, possibly hiring you to do this. You have to figure out really, you know, quick, and you have to be competent at like being able to fulfill on what you say you can do. So it's like a double-edged sword. So, I mean, strategy is, and I have a couple recommendations I can give you guys for reading for strategy, because it's like that, I could do a whole weekend just on strategy. But there's a lot of great common knowledge you can get. The Art of War is an amazing book. Have you guys read that? Yeah, it's an incredible book on strategy. And it's really, really cool to read that book and apply it to styling. Like, really cool. Right? So, because, I mean, you can. You know, and then there's another one that I recommend called Winning by Jack Welch. Jack Welch ran GE for many years. He's one of the most powerful businessmen in the world. He's amazing, amazing, and really, really good at strategy and working with people. Amazing, amazing at strategy. So he did a book that's a lot of strategy. And then it's like, and then there's a ton of like common knowledge you can get. Like Harvard has a book on strategy that is pretty decent. You know, creating and implementing the best strategies for your business. That's the Harvard book. I mean, even that, just look at that, and then you can start to see, okay, what strategy do I drive for my clients? And we'll talk about it when we get into the specific different types of jobs. And you'll kind of start to see the kinds of strategies, but it's something, it's very creative. Like strategy is the other thing that we do as stylists that are really, really creative, because you design them yourself. It's easy to just look at other stylists and see what they do and try to mimic it, or just mimic it, but you'll never outcompete anyone that way. Like you never get, none of the top stylists do that. They've created their own strategies and their own processes. So, and that's why I don't teach that way. You know, when I was working on this weekend, it's like, yeah, I could sit and explain to you guys all of the different processes that I do and all the different techniques and all the different charts and stuff I have in place. But what's powerful for me is not necessarily going to be powerful for you. You know, it's different for each. There are guidelines, yeah. There are certain structures and guidelines, and I'll be sharing those. But, you know, it's really not about mimicry. It's about being creative. And, you know, and it's the same. It's like strategy is a story. It's just a story of how you're going to get things done and what you're going to do, and the skills that you're going to bring to the table to do it. So strategy, the definition I have for strategy is a plan of action designed to achieve a major and overall aim. Strategy is also the art of planning and directing operations and movements. And it says here in a war or battle, but I just say in the fashion industry. So, which is kind of like a war or battle sometimes. But you know, it really is like planning, and then operations. You know, like my assistant, Adam, I have to call Adam in the business an assistant because that's the role that people understand, but he's operations. He's running my operations. He's an operations manager. So, you know, because of the logistics, and we have gajillions of dollars of clothes coming in and out of the studio, and you know, we write, you know, the credits we have to do for the magazines and the budgets that we handle, it's so operations. And I highly recommend also with those strategy books, like some operations books. I think the guy who wrote, I'll get a book list for you guys. And then you guys can, if you want to read it, it's so helpful. Because of everything we do is so logistical. I mean, I think any business is like that, but people have a preconceived notion that styling isn't like logistics or something, and I'm just like, really? And that's a lot, taking care of my clients, it's inside the operations and logistics. And if something breaks down and, you know, I don't have this for my kit, or it's like they're not being taken care of anymore, and that's why I don't get hired again. You know, even if I do the best, most amazing outfit that anyone's ever seen, if I lose those clothes afterwards, the editors don't care. They're just never going to hire me again, even if it's the best story I've ever done and they've ever seen. Like if the logistics break, you know, and the operations break down. So it's the amount of competitive edge a stylist has going in and speaking to a client or a magazine editor and speaking strategy on top of your book. I mean, people, they don't even know what to say to me when I do it. And it's so much fun to watch their faces drop and then like hand me a check. And I'm like, yes, you know, but you have to be able to fulfill. And so that's kind of the other, there's a responsibility inside of strategy of once you have done, you know, presented like, okay, here's our action plan. Here's how we're gonna plan for the next 2 weeks to take care of this result that you want. We're gonna make this happen, and here's how we're gonna do it, and here are the people involved, and this is the kind of image we're gonna create. You know, I just lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Mm-hmm. Oh, fulfilling. Yeah, so if you speak this huge plan, and then you can't actually do what you speak, and it's shocking to me how many times I've watched this happen. I've done it. I like when I first started, it was like, that's why I went and assisted. Because I was styling on my own before I went to French Vogue. Because I had time off in between the seasons, so I was like styling, but I was making these huge mistakes. I was like, I've committed to this like big project, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, and that's why I stopped and started assisting, because I was like, because I couldn't find any other training. Couldn't find any other way to learn how to take care of the processes and things. So, you know, I learned the hard way many years ago that you have to be competent to fulfill on what you're promising.
What's an example of not fulfilling?
So what happened to me, or what I did, it didn't happen to me, I did it. I told a client that, what were we working on? I didn't understand about wardrobe budgets yet, and I was working on a jeans campaign, and I was handling the entire budget for everything, and I made commitments to bring them certain kind of clothes, and I didn't really say designers or anything like that, but just certain level of clothes, and then based on the wardrobe budget I gave them, I told them way too little. You know, I told them like $1,000 when I really needed like $10,000. So like then suddenly I couldn't fulfill. And I had to go back to them, and they're like, well, we don't have that. And I'm like, well, then I can't do what we were gonna do. And they're like, but, you know, and I already committed to the whole job. So I had this huge breakdown around, and then I also I didn't have good assistants at the time, so I didn't even have anyone to help me shop it. So I couldn't get it done in the time that I needed to get it done. Like I was making, and I just didn't know. You know, I hadn't done that kind of job before where I was doing a huge shopping because it was just a jeans company, so they needed everything else. And I had been doing styling to that point where pretty much everything was there for the commercial clients. It was like small accessories and things, but it wasn't like shopping an entire shoot. And I mean, I've had situations before. I mean, I've learned how to make, you know, a lot of what we do is problem solving, a lot. You know, I've been in situations where I needed two-year-old boy swimming trunks in the middle of December here in New York. And it's like, you're just not gonna, like, I had to have them made. I had to figure out how to have them made overnight for this shoot. And, you know, because it was like, that was like the only thing, you know, there was like the 5 shots, and that was one of them. And so problem solving is a huge thing that we do. But it's like, I had to go and work for French Vogue, for Marie Amélie, because we did a lot of commercial work, to understand how to do a commercial job. How to handle the budgets, how to estimate the budgets, because that's a big thing of what we do in our negotiations, is saying, okay, well, this is how much it's gonna be. And that's and we'll get into that too when we get into the commercial jobs. If the budget's not there for me to do what they want me to do, I don't work with them. Because it just doesn't, I'm not gonna win, they're not gonna win. You know, and some of those clients are like, oh yeah, but you know, so-and-so could make it work for $2,000, and I'm like, well, but I don't know what so-and-so's doing, but I have ethics, and I don't borrow clothes under different names and do all that kind of stuff, and I'm telling you, this is what it costs for what you want, and if they don't listen to me, then I'm like, oh, I can't do the job, I'm sorry. And people are like, you're not gonna do it? I'm like, no. It's like, I don't do things that are out of my ethics, and this is, plus it's like, you need this money to do that. I can, with this money, and I always give it, if someone has a budget that they want something that they can't afford, I usually tell them what they can afford for that budget, and then they have a choice. You know, so it's really important to be able to fulfill on what you say, like to know, know what a wardrobe, like know how much a wardrobe budget is for so many looks and so many models and a certain level of designer.